Hi guys, welcome back, and this time around I'm bringing you the latest from ZIIGAAT, the Crescent, a 2+2 hybrid IEM. Together with the Crescent, I am actually also going to be talking about the Odyssey, which is, I know, been out for 7-8 months now probably. I think the first reviews I saw for the Odyssey was something like 8 months ago. And to be totally honest, it just went completely under the radar for me. I saw people talking about it. I meant to get it. I didn't get it. And then now when I purchased the Crescent, I decided let me get the Odyssey as well and see what all the hype is about. And I'm actually glad that I did, because not only does it have its place as one of the most impressive IEMs in this configuration, or most impressive hybrids that I've heard all year, but also it helps me kind of set the stage for the Crescent to a certain extent. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you with the unboxing and so on. ZIIGAAT usually doesn't disappoint in that aspect. I mean, the Odyssey brings this case. Sorry, yes, the Odyssey. The Crescent brings this bigger case. Nice selection of tips. I'm actually using the stock tips on both the Odyssey and the Crescent. It's a decent enough cable as well. I mean, I would have liked a nicer cable, especially when you consider that it's $279. But I mean, look, it is what it is. But like I said, the tips are nice. The cable could have been nicer. It's an exchangeable termination here on the cable. But what matters is the actual IEM, and the reality is this: the build quality of the Crescent, as is the case with all of ZIIGAAT's products, is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's a beautifully built shell. It fits phenomenally well, especially when you consider it's got two 10mm drivers inside and then two BAs. One of the 10mm drivers is a PET, the other one is an LCP, and they are supposedly mounted in a isobaric configuration and helping each other out. I've got no real notion of what type of isobaric configuration they're actually talking about, but anyway, it's irrelevant. It's neither here or there. The reality is, whatever they did, it works and it sounds amazing, and that's what matters to me, to be honest with you. Fitment is fine. Like I said, the faceplate is very nice. I mean, look, there is absolutely nothing that I can't fault in terms of the build quality and of the feel of the IEM itself. I mean, ZIIGAAT knows what they're doing. They've been around now for a while, and from their very first products, you know, the Nuo and so on and so forth, they've always kind of made it clear that they know how to build IEMs, the Dos Cinco, the Cinco Tres, and all those other IEMs. As for the Odyssey, again, beautiful shell. It's a single 10mm this time around, with 3 BAs. Shell is obviously a little bit smaller than the Odyssey because of only having one dynamic driver, but it's very much the same overall quality. This is not the stock cable. The actual Odyssey cable is not that great, to be honest. This is an effect audio cable that I'm using, and I'm really impressed with it. Honestly, very, very impressed with the cable. Measured not only within what I like seeing cables measuring, but it actually it does work, especially compared with the stock cable. And this is not too often that I say this. I did perceive a difference in the quality, in the overall quality. As for what else do I have here to kind of help us understand where the Crescent is and so on, and also where the Odyssey is, I've got here the Aful, the Explorer, the Performer 3, if you want to call it that way, the Explorer, the 1+2. I've got here also another IEM from ZIIGAAT, the Estrella, and I've got here the Hisenior, the Cano Cristales. The Cano Cristales, it's actually, and it's not the first time that this happens with the Hisenior IEM. This whole situation also actually happened with the Mega 5 EST series, and it's the following situation. It's one of the few IEMs that the difference between measuring it with different sources is tremendous, especially in the bass department. I actually caught on to that when I was testing the Mega 5, the 7th anniversary edition, and the base edition, the Mega 5 EST, where I saw monumental differences in terms of the bass quantity, not so much the performance, but the bass quantity, depending whether I was using an ESS dongle or I was using a Cirrus Logic dongle. And the ones that I usually use are the Yuki or the TP50 in terms of Cirrus Logic, and the ESS usually is the M15 from Q Style, or then the Rose RZ500, the Rose Techniques RZ500. Sometimes I also use a TP30. Anyway, I saw huge differences. I could notice a huge difference in the quantity of the available bass. And my fault, mea culpa, when I did the test for the Cano Cristales, I actually didn't do that let's say that small little test of comparing different dongles to see how it sounded. I just hooked it up straight away with the dongle that I had on my measuring rig, which was a TP50, and then I hooked it up with my Yuki, which is also a Cirrus Logic, and it sounded phenomenal in both cases, and I just left it. Now when I was doing this review, and because I was kind of reminded to a certain extent when I was listening to the Crescent I was reminded of the Cano Cristales. I went and compared graphs, and lo and behold, they not only do they graph extremely similar. I mean, the similarity in terms of graph is very, very pronounced, actually, way more than what you would believe. But I also then, because of changing different dongles and so on and so forth on the Crescent, I inevitably also did it on the Cano Cristales, and find out that the difference in terms of bass quantity by using an ESS and a Cirrus Logic, we are talking about a difference of, let me just 1 second, we're talking about a bass difference of 7 dBs, which is, it's significant, okay? So my apologies if I perhaps misled people, or I didn't give a completely more realistic review of the Cano Cristales, because when I did review the Cano Cristales a couple of weeks ago, I said that I really enjoyed the performance of the Cano Cristales. It was, you know, extremely enjoyable, loads of bass, high quality bass. If basses was something that you were looking for, definitely this would fit the bill. But that I was slightly disappointed by how the mids especially were done, maybe excessively present to a certain extent, and I've come to the conclusion that that was down to basically the dongle that I was using, because using it with the Rose Techniques, contrary to actually using it with the Cirrus Logic stuff, the Yuki and so on and so forth, it actually sounds really, really impressive. It sounds very, very good. And you know, yes, fair enough, it's $399. It's substantially more expensive than the other IEMs here. It's also 2+6, fine as well. But the performance that it does give is justified, or at least justifies to a certain extent the price, and I have to say that my impressions of the Cano Cristales have improved substantially, and I definitely think it's an IEM that's worthwhile considering if you are careful enough to choose your source. If you do not have varied sources, then I would say maybe perhaps try and see if you can audition it. But if you do have several different sources, I think the Cano Cristales should maybe then make its way into your selection of IEMs to, who knows, maybe own. Anyway, I'm just ranting here about the Cano Cristales and not talking about what you want to talk about. I'm going to get the Odyssey out of the way first, because I think that's the easiest one to talk about. The Odyssey, as mentioned by a few other reviewers, and not that I watch a lot of them, but I watch one or two that I consider, let's say, trustworthy enough in their opinions, and we also share to a certain extent a lot of the same similar tastes in terms of music. The Odyssey is an experience. That's the reality. It is an experience. It is an IEM which musicality is the I would say the most important objective of the IEM. And I think not only has ZIIGAAT always made IEMs which are extremely musical. I mean, I love the Dos Cinco, the Estrella, the Arete, but I think that or up to the point of the Odyssey will probably take the crown as the musical king from ZIIGAAT, definitely. The balance that they have struck in terms of the whole frequency response, not only in terms of bass, but then how it transitions into the mid bass, how it transitions into the mids, into the upper mids, and the treble, the extension that it has. It is really a surprise, because you don't. Yes, on the one hand, we more and more have IEMs which are extremely well tuned. The IEMs, the overall quality of IEMs in general has improved leaps and bounds, and something like this a couple of years ago would probably have cost not $179. It would have cost $500 or $600 easily. Okay, but the reality is, irrespective of the price or irrespective of what it is in terms of its configuration, what they've done here in the Odyssey is flawless, in my opinion. Bass is, like I said, phenomenal. It's clean. It's a tuck style bass. By 200 hertz, it's flat. It stays flat until 1 kilohertz, where it starts rising slowly. The pinna gain peaks at 3, plateaus across that, and then slowly drops off after 8K. Clean, detailed, present bass. It's got guts, it's got cubic inches, like I like doing those analogies with cars and so on and so forth. Mids are phenomenal. Male and female vocals are incredibly clean, incredibly detailed, very immersive. You lush, you just get drawn in. It's got and some of you that follow me know that I really like the way that the mids are done by Panon and ISN Audio, and it's got that style of captivating mids, at least for me. The vocals draw me in, they push me in, they keep me there, and it doesn't really matter what I'm listening to, but everything just sounds absolutely phenomenal. Be it for example, I say The Night Drive by Kate Paul, or The Other Side by The Other Circle, or which are more EDM style music or songs, or then be it stuff which is real music. Let's say that's why I like Cecile Norby or Carol Dubach or Soul Persona or Brian Simpson. Bass is never an issue. It always does things top notch, and mids as well top notch. Nothing to be said there. Nothing, honestly. In terms of extension up top, smooth, detailed, without question. I did find here and there the occasional hint of a slight over energy. It could be just me, so I'm not, because it's something that I really never saw anybody pick up on it. So I'm gonna say that it's probably just me. It's probably just my ears that for some reason are sensitive to some aspect of the frequency response in the in there of the Odyssey. And so I would say take what I've just said about the treble with a grain of salt. Okay, I think it's more probable that I am the one that is at fault than in fact the Odyssey being the IEM that's lacking in any way. Like I said, the balance that struck across the board until about 5-6 kilohertz, at least for me, it's impeccable. And it's just after that I sometimes find that, I don't know, just a slight amount of energy here and there with certain songs, like Twilight from Brian Simpson is one of the songs where I picked up on that. It just sounded just a little bit excessive, let's put it that way. Technically, soundstage is great, phenomenal, big sound, huge space, imaging, detailed retrieval, macro and macro details, phenomenal. Timbre and tonality, spot on. Definitely timbre and tonality, soundstage are the two, and imaging are the three, let's say. Yes, the three standouts. Micro and macro details, I'm not going to say they're not good, they are good, but they have a tendency of, like I said, sometimes I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, because I don't want to come across being negative with regards to this, because like I said, I am honestly convinced that it's more of an issue with myself than necessarily an issue with the IEM. I would say that the micro and macro details are exceptional, with the odd occasion here and there where they sound overly pronounced. There's just a little bit too much. Okay. Other than that, like I said, nothing can really be pointed as a negative aspect. Fair enough, $179 is a lot of money. You have other IEMs with more complex configurations available for that amount. But the reality is, as I've said before, if you are looking for something which is highly musical, highly capable, you truthfully cannot go wrong with the Odyssey. You cannot. The first IEM that when I was listening to the Odyssey came to mind was the Estrella. And when I show you the graph, you'll understand why. The Estrella, in terms of bass performance, lower mids, upper mids, up to about 3 kilohertz, they are graphing identical, and in my opinion, they sound very, very similar. The Estrella has got as well the same issue with me in my ears as the Odyssey has, which is there's a part there in the upper mids, treble area that's just a little bit overly intensive at times with specific songs, and it doesn't spoil things, it doesn't make things, nothing, and none of that. It just means that I have to just keep the volume a little bit lower than I usually like keeping the volume, and they're fine. But otherwise, the Estrella and the Odyssey, for me, in my ears, they sound almost identical. There are occasions where I would say the Estrella has perhaps just a little bit more bass presence, but there are other occasions where I get that same feeling from the Odyssey. So I'll kind of say that they are trading blows there, and there isn't a definite one here that I think comes out on top. Both are exceptional in that department, exceptional in the mids. And yes, the Estrella does have a little bit more extension past 10K, which I would like to say that I can perceive it, and I do to a certain extent, but it's more of a graph thing in terms of what there is there than something that I actually hear. So I will believe and agree that there is more extension than what I am capable of hearing, and that's because I've got old man ears and I don't listen as well as I used to. So that was the first thing that came to mind was, wow, this thing sounds extremely similar to the Estrella. And then the other IEM that kind of also reminded me a lot of the Odyssey was the Performer 2. The Performer 2 tamer overall, not as pronounced. I'm trying to get the graph, 1 second. Odyssey, where is the Crescent, where is the Explorer, exactly, number 24. My apologies, guys. Tamer in terms of the upper mids and treble as compared to the Odyssey, not as intense. Also a slightly less bass. It's more of a gliding style of bass as opposed to a tuck. But overall, between, I would say, 100 and 2 kilohertz, they kind of graph very similar. The same sort of glide in the bass, the same sort of plateauing across the mids and the majority of the mids. And then the change occurs there at around 2 kilohertz when the upper mids kind of start. So the Explorer maintains itself still plateaued and nice and smooth. I mean, we're talking about a pinna gain on the Explorer, which is maintaining itself at around 4.5-5 degrees across the whole, upper mids and treble, while the Odyssey goes up to about 6.5-7. So there's a little bit more energy there on the Odyssey, definitely. And you do notice that yes, the Odyssey does have more energy. It's but when you kind of match volumes and so on, you can understand the similarity that exists between the two of them. Ultimately, the Odyssey does edge out the Explorer. I'm not going to deny it. Fair enough. This is 119. There is a price difference here between the two of them. And yes, I would say as well that if you have the Explorer and you like the Explorer, the Odyssey would be a solid upgrade to the Explorer, definitely, but not an absolute must-have or must-do upgrade, especially because you can pick up the Explorer. I've seen it at under $100, and at under $100, it's a tremendous value. Trust me, it is tremendous value. This is one of the best IEMs from Aful, without question. That's unquestionable there. Anyway, I think I've placed the Odyssey now well. It's kind of a slightly more lively Explorer, a little bit less lively than the Estrella, so it's highly musical. The balance that's struck across the whole frequency range in terms of the IEM's performance is, in my opinion, faultless. I'm not even going to mention that little nitpick that I talked about because it's just something that has to do with me. Probably, I don't think that honestly it will be something that will affect other people. So top marks. The hype is justified. The you know, the reason why the Odyssey gathered the momentum that it gathered, and it is considered the IEM that it is considered, I think is more than justified. There's apparently now a revised Odyssey 2 version, which I'm trying to see if I can get my hands on it. And from what I see, it seems that the biggest difference is centered around that 2 to 4 kilohertz area, where it's slightly more forward. So it's got more that clinical type of vibe going. As for the Crescent, because this is what is the main attraction here, the Crescent is, at least for me, in my opinion, and after listening to it now for a couple of days, it's very much the Odyssey, but with better bass, okay, and with mids and upper mids that I would say are as polished, if not slightly more polished. And the one thing that I did notice was, and again, we must keep in mind two things here. One, yes, we have got two drivers now doing, you know, the lower frequencies, so there's a lot more energy there, and it's noticeable, although it's not overpowering, it's not overwhelming, it doesn't muddy things, it doesn't muddy the sound, doesn't muffle the bass, the mids, the vocals, nothing. It's got a lot of bass, definitely, but it's a very high quality bass. So that is one of the reasons for what I'm about to say. And the other reason is this: there is a slight dip in there, at least in my unit there, in that 5-7 kilohertz area. There is a slight dip in that part there of the frequency response. And I think that that is the reason why I was saying that on the Odyssey, I was picking up on certain things at that frequency range there, that, you know, that I don't pick up on it on the Odyssey, and on the Crescent. And because I don't pick up on it on the Crescent, there lies the conundrum, you know, is it me that's hearing this, or is it there present exactly in the actual IEM? Does the Odyssey have that slight little issue with it, or it doesn't exist, or is it just my ears? I'm gonna stick with the fact that it's probably just my ears that are being a little bit picky. The reality is, irrespective of that, I prefer the way that it's done in the Crescent. The Crescent, in that department there of the upper treble, is it's like I like it. Perfect. It's just the way I like it. Perfect. There's no excesses, there's no too much, nothing. It just sounds phenomenal in that part of the spectrum. And songs like, for example, If Tomorrow Never Comes, beautiful. The Crescent really, I would say the Crescent takes the musicality of the Odyssey and just takes it up a step or two. Okay, it just, you've gone up a step or two. Yes, fair enough. There is $100 price difference between the two of them. I will assume that price difference is as well, a lot of it down to the quality of the hardware. So that I will assume that the dynamic drivers that are here are of better quality than there. I will also assume that the Knowles drivers that they are using, although they also use Knowles in the Odyssey, that the Knowles drivers that they're using here in the Crescent are slightly better quality, especially the mids. I know the mid BA is different on these two, and thus this can also be another reason why I have that little thing that I was saying, that little nitpick. But the truth is this: I mean, Crescent is incredible. I mean, we've seen over the last couple of months, and I've said it countless times, that there's been some really absolutely monster IEMs coming out lately. The SL224, the Vulcan 2 in its own right. You know, there's a lot of really good, the QE years, excuse me, QE years, as well as at least a couple of very good IEMs lately. And the Crescent definitely joins that group. the Crescent definitely joins that group. This is an IEM that were it a couple of years ago. This sort of sound, you would only be able to get it if you were paying over $500-600 for it, without question. I mean, there's an IEM that I don't have it with me, so I'm not going to be able to talk too much about it, but I will say this much. It's from Tanstrom, it's the Prism. It's an IEM that I absolutely loved. It was a loaner, but no way is it worth the $500+. No way. I mean, and from the brief recollection that I can have, yes, it's an incredible sounding IEM, but this just walks all over it. I mean, that's the reality. Taking this, for example, taking the Crescent and comparing it to something like, for example, the Blessing 3, again, in my opinion, a far superior IEM, and at the same price point, which just shows what I've said countless times. You know, we are in a time period that IEMs have become so good that there's very little or no reason, honestly, to spend over $300-400 at most for an IEM. When you spend over that amount of money for an IEM, it's gonna have to be giving you godlike performance, in my opinion. Seriously, because you can get single DDs at under $100, which will blow the majority of IEMs up to $500 away. You can get hybrids, which is the case here of the Crescent, the Odyssey, and a couple of other examples, under again $300-200 price point, that are absolute beasts. Why would you, in your right mind, in my opinion, go spend, you know, $1,000+ on an IEM that will marginally play better? That's the reality, marginally. And I've got enough IEMs over that price point to kind of say what I'm saying with a certain conviction, or with a certain amount of, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just talking out of my ass. Anyway, Crescent, in my opinion, top marks, job well done, technically very capable as well. Soundstage, imaging, timbre and tonality. I would say timbre and tonality definitely is the best characteristic technically wise of the Crescent. So technically phenomenal IEM. In terms of overall balance of sound, phenomenal, really well done. Very musical. It takes, I would say, it's very safe for me to say, it takes the lesson of the Odyssey and just gives it its little twist, and makes it, I mean, for me, definitely one of the most solid IEMs under $300 currently. As compared to something like, for example, the Cano Cristales, it's actually quite, it was actually quite interesting, because if I choose, like I said, the correct dongle or the correct source for the Cano Cristales, and I'll show you the graphs in a little bit, and you'll see the performance of the two is actually surprisingly similar, although you will see that the Cano Cristales doesn't have the same extension past 10K than what the Crescent does. That is not really the case. The extension is basically very similar. Obviously, you've got a lot more BAs there, so everything gets more, let's say, spread out over all of those BAs. You've got 4 BAs. You got, if I'm not mistaken, actually, I think I said 2+. I think I mentioned the Cristales as being a 2+6, but I think it's actually 2+8. Let me just confirm here. Yeah, exactly, 2+8. I thought I said 2+6 more, so my apologies. And so on the Cano Cristales, you've got 4 custom BAs handling the mids, and then 4 custom BAs handling the highs. And because you've got all of that, let's say, information being spread out over more hardware, more BAs, you can get away with the overall level being lower, okay, and in terms of final volume actually being the same as on the Crescent, because you've only got 2 BAs handling then, let's say, the upper end of the spectrum. So they actually sound very, very similar. Whether it's justified the extra amount here for the Cano Cristales as opposed to the Crescent, I would say The Crescent will probably be the safest one to make sure that it sounds good. While the Cano Cristales does have that little nuance, because with the ESS, it sounds really good, very nice balance. But I found that with the Cirrus Logic chips, it it brought out that slight little negativity that I mentioned about in terms of the upper mids that I didn't really enjoy. It made the Cano Cristales sound a little bit unpolished when you have this many BAs. Smoothness and polish is supposed to be part of the equation, and it just wasn't hitting the mark there. But putting that aside, with the ESS RZ 500 from Rose Techniques that I was doing a lot of the listening for with and even with the AKM, I actually tried it also with the Q15 with the AKM. With those two, the Cano Cristales does sound really good, very competent, and definitely, I think, like I said earlier, something that you should at least consider listening. The biggest difference that I noticed, funny enough, was actually in the bass. I found the bass here to be better quality, slightly better quality, slightly cleaner than on the Cano Cristales. The Cano Cristales had a tendency of sometimes sounding just a little overly bloated. Okay, it's not a day and night difference, it's not a huge difference, but you will pick up on it. Okay, you will pick up on it. So slightly cleaner, more incisive bass here, slightly bloated over here. On some songs that bloatiness is welcomed, on other songs maybe it can be a little bit overwhelming and just kind of tarnish the whole experience. All right, anyway guys, let me now quickly just show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay guys, so let's talk about graphs now. Let's start here first with the graph for the Odyssey. Okay, this is the graph of the ZIIGAAT Odyssey. As you can see, very nicely executed bass, nice sub bass focus, flat by 200, shoots across, smooth pin again, maintains itself plateaued, some extension past 10k. So you can't go wrong, honestly. I mean, this, what you see is what you hear. Phenomenal bass, clean mids, vocals are incredible, instruments, the detail up top in terms of cymbals, crashes, everything, it's exceptional. Wind instruments sound really good. Nice extension past 10k, detailed. Honestly, there is very little that I can mention apart from that issue that I said, which I think it's more of a personal thing than anything else. Okay, as compared to some of the IEMs that I was talking about, and we'll start here with the Explorer, and let me just make the Explorer in red so you guys can see what I was talking about. Okay, all right, this is the Aful Explorer. Very similar vibe overall, as you can see, the same sort of emphasis on the bass, the performance of the upper mids and treble shooting across in a nice plateaued manner, the way it drops off as well, very good. The performance of the Aful Performer 3 is I think it goes without saying. It's a really well executed IEM that again has a very mature style of tuning, especially when you consider its price point and its configuration of 1+2 and so on. The other one that I mentioned as well that reminded me, actually was the first one that reminded me of the Odyssey, was the Estrella, and I'm going to take away here now the Explorer and put the Estrella also in red. You can see what I said earlier. They are, I mean, it's basically the same thing in terms of bass, up to about 3 kilohertz, and then the differences that exist is up top, more extension in the part of the Estrella. It's got that extra BA. I would say that these two, the Odyssey, the Estrella, and the Dos Cinco, are very similar in their overall sound. The difference is obviously the Odyssey only has one DD, while the Dos Cinco has 2 DDs, while the Odyssey and the Estrella have 1 DD. And yes, you do notice there's a little bit of a difference there, but at the same sort of volume levels, the overall perception that you have of all of them is extremely equal in bass, in mids, in vocals, very, very similar. It's just up top that you start noticing more the differences between the three of them. And that's that. Okay, now let me put here, take away the Estrella, and let me put here first the Crescent. Okay, I've just placed the Crescent in orange, as you guys can see. Graphs almost identical. That area there that I was saying that could be a problem maybe for me is not as pronounced. And although you see this kind of extension up top, I don't really hear that far out. It's like at 15, 16K, so I can't really talk about it too much. What I will say is that the overall sound of the Crescent and of the Odyssey is extremely equal, and ultimately the one that's just a little bit more polished, especially at the top end, is the Crescent. So both extremely musical, really, really good. And when I put in here the Estrella, you can again see how close the three of them are in terms of overall sound. I would say the Estrella is perhaps the one that has the most extension at the top. I would say the Odyssey is the one that has that treble area, upper mid treble area, maybe the one that's the most present, while the Crescent, I think, is the one that has the overall best balance of the three. It's still detailed, still got plenty of information, still very technically capable, but the musicality part of things is the one that has been, again, the main objective. So it's an extremely or highly musical IEM. As compared, let me just put again the Crescent, as compared to the Cano Cristales. Actually, let me first show you the Cano Cristales with the two different dongles so you guys can understand what I was talking about. So this is the Cano Cristales. Where is it? And this is the Cano Cristales. Okay, let me just align the two of them here. Alright, as you can see, the difference that exists here is in the bass, with the RZ in the black line. So with the ESS dongle, it is more balanced out, it makes more sense. With the Science Logic, for some reason, at least in my particular case, it's graphing, and I actually tried 4 different ESS, 4 different Science Logic dongles, and they all measured the same. TP50, TP35, Yuki, and the Aful dongle. They all measure the same. It is the one that's just sounding, I don't know, I can't really, it's, to be honest, it's not even really in the bass where it's bugging me. It's there's just something here in terms of the upper mids that with the Science Logic dongles, it's just not sounding as nice as with the RZ500, as with the ESS Rose Techniques. Let's put it that way. It's not that it sounds bad, because it doesn't sound bad. It's just in the Rose Techniques it sounds more polished, more capable. Okay. So it was with this that I did all of the listening, okay, of the Cano Cristales, and comparing it here with the Crescent. As you can see, they graph almost identical. The similarity is absolutely, I mean, it's there, it's in your face, you can see it. The difference that exists graphically is over here, okay, but audibly you don't perceive it as having this much of a difference. Mids, upper mids, nothing to be said there as gain. The dongle will affect the polishness of that mids. Definitely it will. You know, however much it pains me to have to say this or to admit to this, yes, it does. It definitely does. And that's that, guys. I mean, I think I've talked enough. I've positioned the Crescent well enough. The Odyssey already has enough reputation, so I don't need to talk too much about the Odyssey. Both are incredible IEMs. That's the reality. I'm looking forward to getting the Odyssey 2 and seeing how it stacks up to its original. But you know, there's nothing that we can complain with regards to Ziigat. Ziigat know what they are doing, they tune well, and their IEMs are a reflection of that knowledge and of that capability. And that's that. All right. As always, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask me. You take care now. Bye-bye.